Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our corporate sponsor, Northern Trust, for sponsoring the session addressing mental health, why the time to act is now. My name is Kapila Jayakumar, and I am Program Manager at Community Business. I will be the moderator for today's session. At Community Business, we understand the importance of addressing disability at the workplace. However, one aspect of disability which often gets overlooked is mental health. While mental health issues are such a significant problem in India, our communities, educational institutes, and workplaces are not yet equipped as they should be to support mental health. In today's session, we seek to provide useful information about mental health, why it is such a sizable problem in India, and the factors contributing to it. We will also talk about how companies can begin addressing mental health in the workplace. To help us understand this issue, we are excited to have with us today Mr. Manoj Chandran, CEO of White Swan Foundation. Manoj has been instrumental in developing India's largest knowledge repository on mental health for the public. He has more than 24 years of experience in a wide range of areas that include journalism, communication, marketing, strategy, and leadership. Earlier, Manoj served as leadership group member of Ashoka Innovators for the Public, a leading social entrepreneurship organization. We would like to make this session informative yet interactive. And as Manoj shares his perspectives, we encourage participants to post questions using the live chat function. We will be sure to address your questions during the dedicated 15-minute slot for Q&A at the end of this session. So over to you, Manoj.
Thank you, Kapila. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to speak with you today at this Community Business in India conference. I'm here to touch upon a topic that seems to be sometimes the elephant in the room, that is in fact growing in size. To begin with, it is important for us to look at why are we discussing this today? Why is mental health an extremely important subject, given the increasing visibility the topic is getting in media these days? There is no denying that mental health problems are increasingly coming closer to us, ever closer to us than earlier. Today, we know of someone who has had a mental health issue in our circle of influence. And we are aware of the way these issues are wrecking the lives of the people and their families, adversely impacting the institutions they belong to and society they are part of. And we also know that there are a lot of efforts being put in by various institutions like government. However, another big reason why we are discussing this issue today is that we are yet to find a solution that can help us address the much larger social nature of problem that mental health issue is throwing at us. And we need to really find a solution fast. We have a lot of solutions around technology services, But as we look into the presentation, we realize that we need a solution that is far more inclusive than that. Let's just do a reality check of the service infrastructure in on mental health care in India. And we all know, many of us would know a lot of these data. For a population of 1.3 billion people, it is said that we have about slightly more than 4,000 psychiatrists. And if you put all the mental health professionals together, which would include psychiatrists, psychologists, psychiatric social workers, psychiatric nurses, it would be not more than 10,000, we are told. And there are no more than 50 mental health hospitals in the country. Nearly 50 mental health hospitals for 1.3 billion people, 20% of whom are expected to have a mental health issues in their lifetime. And 0.2 psychiatric beds for a population of 1 lakh, for every 1 lakh population that we have. Predominantly, and this is only opening up only recently, predominantly most of the mental health services being offered in the country are government run. And we have only recently begun to see private entities, private practitioners, independently, institutions coming into the space. However, it is important to understand that when it comes to mental health issues as against physiological health issues, that services infrastructure is not enough. There is a need for us to look at social infrastructure, which plays an extremely important role in influencing the decisions that we make. And we all know that mental health care issue or mental health or mental illnesses are plagued with deep-seated stigma across the communities, across all kinds of segments in the country. There are a lot of wrong notions that we carry. There's a lot of baggage we carry in terms of perceived notion, perceived understanding of what mental illnesses are about and our attitude towards people with mental health illnesses. We carry a lot of myths, and we also see these problems largely that those that are of serious in nature. So when we speak about mental health, we speak about serious mental health issues. Many a time disregarding the common mental health issues that a volume of people go through and struggle with the mental health issues, which are common in nature, and which we believe people should cope with those problems by themselves and need not necessarily require professional intervention. It is also interesting to see that because of the wrong notions that we carry, most of the time we see mental health issue in black or white. We think that either there is an existence of mental health issue or there is an absence of mental health issue. And the fact remains that no, there are intensities of mental health issues, and which we many a time are not able to accept, and which again creates a lot of adverse situations for those who go through these problems. What do these kind of numbers result in? They result in one of many data, in fact, but one data which constantly bothers us is that 85% of people who would have had mental health issue won't come up to a mental health professional for treatment. And we all know that most of the mental health problems that we suffer with has a solution in place from a clinical point of view. We can address them, they are treatable. But however, 85% of people don't come up for treatment to a mental health professional. And imagine if that was to happen to any other illnesses, any physiological illness. Take malaria, for instance. If 85% of people were not to be going to the doctors for treating their problems, it would be catastrophic, but we somehow accept that this is okay when it comes to mental health issue. There have been a lot of programs, and of late, particularly, government has been doing a lot of work. The first national mental health program was set in 1982. I really want to touch upon salient objectives of the mental health program, because there are a lot of words that are very important here from a social infrastructure point of view. It mentions that the program should ensure availability and accessibility of mental health care to all, particularly most vulnerable and underprivileged sections of the society. It should encourage application of mental health knowledge in general healthcare and social development, and should promote community participation in mental health services development and stimulate efforts towards self-help in community. There are mental health issues across communities. There are mental health issues among children. There are women mental health issues. There are geriatric mental health issues. One, as an illustration, I would like to pick up, and which I'm sure all of you would relate to, would be workplace mental health. I'm sure you would have come across this phrase many a time. And we all wonder, workplace mental health, what is it about? Is it about mental health issues at workplace, or is it about workplace as a cause for mental health issue? Whatever be the definition, the important thing is that we need to address this among many other segments, many other communities where we see mental health issues really becoming prevalent, rampant, and need solutions very urgently. Now, just to look at some of the data, last year, ASSOCHAM did a study of various health issues among their member companies. And a few data really came out, pointing out to the urgency of addressing mental health issue. 42.5% of employees, as the ASSOCHAM study points out, in private sector suffer from depression or general anxiety disorder. 38.5% employees sleep less than 6 hours a day due to work-related stress. And 48, nearly half of the employees said that they feel fatigue regularly due to general anxiety. These are huge numbers. I mean, if you look at the number of workforce that we have in India, these really translate into huge volume of numbers. We are currently undergoing a survey, internet-based study at White Swan Foundation to really understand what do employees at various workplaces feel about mental health care. And 58.1% of the 350 people who have taken the survey so far have said that they have a mental health issue. 68.6% say that they know of at least one colleague in their organization who seem to have a mental health problem. And 61% said, this is an important number, 61% of them said that there are rarely or never an open discussion on mental health in their workplaces. Now, I was looking at workplace more from an illustrative point of view, and similar numbers could be seen when you look at the numbers or the prevalence of mental health issue and perceptions across communities. Now, what we need to understand is that from a workplace point of view, the high rate of existence of mental health care really translate into the burden of disability, burden of diseases, as World Health Organization point out. It says that depressive disorder is a leading cause of disability and a major contributor to the global burden of diseases. In fact, it mentions depressive disorder. But if you really put all the various illnesses which come under the gamut of psychosocial distresses and mental illnesses, chances are that psychosocial distresses will be among the top 3 reasons for global burden of diseases, among stroke and other areas. So it's really an important area for us to begin to look at and find solutions before we begin to see businesses getting impacted by mental health issues, economies getting impacted by mental health issues. Now, we've been looking at the problem statement. We all agree that the problem's right here and in front of us, and it requires to be attended to. Let's look at the solution space. And again, as we said, that there is a lot of effort in the services infrastructure. People understand that there is a need for us to provide services, and we are increasingly seeing capacity of mental health care professionals being built, and we need to do that. And it's not enough that we have 4,200 psychiatrists. We'll need hundreds of multiple times that number. We also see that there is an increasing mental health care infrastructure needs, such as hospitals and other facilities that we could offer, and closer to where people are, and not just in the urban cities only. We also see the need for integrating mental health care with primary health care facilities in the country. Only then we will be able to look at intervene at a very early stage in providing solutions to mental illnesses. We also see the need for capacity building by providing training to healthcare professionals like general physicians. And we also see that emerging technologies are extremely important. There's an extremely important area, that technologies, which we are over the last couple of years seeing a lot of new solutions and innovative solutions being experimented with. We are requiring to have more emerging technologies to detect mental health problems and aid recovery. However, would services infrastructure be enough? This is the question we always ask ourselves. Would it be enough if we just put together all the services, which typically has been the solution that we have looked at providing when it came to physiological health issues in the past? All the physiological health issues, we said that, yes, we need service professionals and infrastructure like hospitals. Let's provide that. But when it comes to mental health, we have to accept that, no, it's not enough. Why is it not enough? Can you guess the largest institution in the country which provides support and services to people with mental health issues? It's the family and the dear ones. It's not institutions. It's the family and the dear ones which we rely on. 75 to 80% of those people who are suffering from mental health issues in the country are provided for and supported by families and dear ones, which means they are playing an extremely important role in making sure that people with mental health issues are getting some attention and help. So which clearly points out that a better service infrastructure does not necessarily guarantee improved treatment rate. Therefore, we clearly see that there is a need for us to look at a different perspective to solutions. Solution is not necessarily, therefore, restricted to being looked at from a service infrastructure point of view. We need to understand that recovery from a mental health problem cannot be seen from the same lens that we use to define recovery from physiological problems. This is very clearly an observation we have been repeatedly making, that we cannot see providing the same kind of solutions that we have provided in the past for physiological problems. We also see that most physiological problems could be dealt with by individuals, and recovery process could involve just the patient or the closest members of the family, which is what has been the case in most physiological problems, isn't it? But when it comes to mental health issue, we cannot assume that this will hold true. It cannot, because there is a much larger sphere of influence, and we need to therefore take them into account when we are looking for creating solutions. Because when it comes to mental health care and when it comes to treatment being sought for mental health care, it is about decision making, and decision making across all the stakeholders. I would be making a decision whether I need to seek help from somebody for my depressive symptoms. My family members will be making a decision whether they should take me to a professional or not. And who do these decisions depend on? Very important. They depend on not just the self, the dear ones, but they also depend on the larger sphere of influence: friends, colleagues, neighbors, society, community. And which means that they're all an extremely important pivotal stakeholder in the decision we all make in seeking help. And we are not seeking help. We have this dismal treatment gap in the mental health care because the larger section of society is not included in the solution that we have to look for mental health care. Why is it so? Why is this so important? Because there is a deep-seated stigma, as I pointed out, and preconceived notions around mental health care and attitude towards people with mental health issues. We therefore need to influence right decision making. How do you do that? How do you ensure that everybody, each stakeholder in the system, is making the right decision? By not just providing access to services. This is an extremely important one. We have to make sure that access to services provided, but we need to do much more than that. Merely making sure that we have access to psychiatrists and psychologists does not necessarily guarantee that people with mental health issues in the geography will seek help from them. We have to make sure that there is access to right knowledge. We need to therefore help people unlearn, relearn what is right about mental health, what is their role. And because we all have an extremely important role to play. We sensitize people about the impact of the decisions. As a bystander, as a colleague in the company who see that in my cubicle, I have the colleagues who have mental health issue, what could my view on mental health, what could my attitude towards people with mental health issues make an impact on my colleague who needs to make a decision, right decision on what to seek help, on whether to seek help or not. By engaging the larger society to eliminate stigma, by helping create a supportive environment that encourages right decision making. Supportive environment is key. We have to be very conscious of the fact that it is about creating supportive environment. And the first step towards creating supportive environment is about making sure that we all have the right information, knowledge, so that we make the right decision. Just to look at what the World Health Organization points out. The World Health Organization had written down 10 recommendations for improving the treatment gap in mental health care. And I want to draw your attention to 3 of the 10 recommendations that World Health Organization makes. If I may read the highlighted 3 points here, we need to shift care away from institutions to community care. Again, it's reiterating what I was pointing out in my earlier slides, that we cannot rely on just creating more institutions who are providing clinical services. We need to ensure that there is community care to ensure that treatment rate improves in mental health care. We need to educate the public, and we need to involve family, community, and consumers. This is what we find in the solution space we need to look at. So which means that clearly we have to involve the much larger section of the society. What does it translate into from an organization point of view? Organization is nothing but a community. Perhaps is the most efficiently running community that we have, because it has some of the most close-knit relationship bonding among people that we can see. And we need to therefore leverage this that we have. And how do you do that? We have to enable right decision-making, and that can only happen when it comes to mental health care. As you know, that has happened in many other cases in organizations. It starts from the top. There is a requirement, there's an extremely urgent requirement that there is the leadership intent, there is a leadership acceptance that we need to begin to start making this decision-making as a part of the culture across all the stakeholders of mental health care in the organization from the top. We need to address mental health care problems in a more supportive environment, and not just providing access to services. Most organizations understand that they have a role to play in making sure that their employees get access to mental health care services. What do? We make sure that we have tied up with the employee assistance program and bring on board a partner who will make sure that if there is an employee who needs services related to psychosocial distress or mental health illness, they could make an anonymous call to these service providers and access is provided. But we always know that we're not very happy with the number of people who reach out to these organizations. We always wonder, why is it that number of people who reach out, despite the knowledge that there is huge prevalence of mental health issues in my organization, the number of people who reach out to these partners are very low because of the points that we looked at earlier, that the kind of employees that we have, the kind of colleagues that we have who may not necessarily have the right perception, right attitude towards people with mental health issue. And therefore, the absence of a supportive environment that we are able to create in the organization, so that they look at mental health issues like any other physiological problem that we may have looked at, and are encouraged to seek help from the EAP partners that we have on board, which requires us to have an extremely important mindset shift in an institution that can only be achieved once again from the top leadership looking at it and saying, yes, we need to bring in an organization-wide mindset shift on mental health care, on our attitude towards people with mental health issues, and empowering people to make the right decisions. Empowerment is required. If I am seeing a colleague in my organization who has a mental health issue, I need to be empowered to make decisions that help him or her reach out and seek the professional help that they require actually. Therefore, just to in a concluding slide, I want to really point out that what we see when it comes to mental health care from an organization point of view is that, like World Health Organization's recommendation came out, that communities are perhaps the first place where we have to create empowerment, we have to create education. Organization must be seen as the most pivotal of all communities that we have, because we need to accept that mental health problems at workplaces is a serious and urgent issue that can potentially impact businesses. And we've begun to do that. Leadership, and in fact, if you would know that last year, there was perhaps for the first time, World Health Organization and World Bank came together to really discuss the economic impact of mental health care. And we will, as we go along, we will see a lot more discussion around the economic impact of mental health care in organizations and nations' economies. Mental health problems at workplace cannot be addressed the way we do physiological issues. We therefore need to make sure that when we put a mental health care strategy at workplace, when HR departments begin to look at it, they must say that we need to look at from a fresh lens, very innovative lens, which is inclusive in nature, which brings in the social inclusive programs that organizations put together in among their employees. We need to create a supportive environment at workplace for those with mental health issues, and that is a necessity and not an option anymore. We need to accept that decision-making power in mental health care issue does not just lie with the ones suffering. We have been assuming this, that we have been giving them the decision-making power, and they have they can make the decision that they call up the EAP partner and seek help. But we know that it's not as easy as that. We therefore need to make sure that a much larger section of the employee force has been provided the decision-making capability by empowering with the right knowledge. We need to provide access to right knowledge and engage employees in mental health education. And that's the first step towards any strategy that we can put together on mental health care at workplace. So this is the message that I wanted to bring to you. And I also want to briefly touch upon what is White Swan? What is this organization about? White Swan Foundation is an NGO that we started about 3 years ago with just an extremely specific mission statement that we want to deliver knowledge services for mental health and well-being. We understood very early on that if there is one component in mental health care that is the most fundamental of all needs, it is access to knowledge. We need to, of course, provide services. We need to, of course, provide other infrastructure to people. But if we don't provide knowledge to people, it's very difficult for us to get them to make right decisions. And we therefore created an organization which focuses on creating and disseminating knowledge in various forms to various communities. With that intent, we began India's first knowledge repository, online knowledge repository on mental health and well-being, which is available not just in English, but 5 Indian languages also. Today, it has more than 600 pieces of content it covers the whole gamut of areas and topics of mental health care, looking at workplace mental health. In fact, even as we speak with you today, we are launching our whole exclusive section on workplace and mental health care on our portal. We have done huge amount of content on geriatric mental health, child mental health, women and mental health. And we realize, and every time we do that, we realize that we need to take the content to where people are, because just can't expect people to come to a portal and consume information and make right decisions. So we have an extremely strong community engagement program, which takes our content and knowledge to various organizations. So with that, I conclude my presentation. And once again, thank you for the rapt attention, and look forward to taking your questions. Thank you.
Hi, Manoj. Thank you so much. So we have a few questions that have come in. The first one is mental health the same as mental illness, or are they different?
So from what I understand, we understand is mental health is a larger landscape under which mental health care, mental well-being, and mental illnesses will fall in. So like any other health, so health would mean preventive and promotive and curative element. So mental illness is where you have to look at the curative element. There are illnesses coming and you have to get cured, get treatment for that. Mental health would be much larger picture there.
Great. And then a second question that has come in. If we need to encourage our business leaders to address mental health, what can we say in terms of the cost to the business?
The cost of the business will be completely depend on how you look at the benefit that accrue from the kind of effort you put in. If you integrate your efforts and strategy towards mental health care with the HR program, the employee well-being program, and social inclusion programs, it would be an extremely incremental cost, if at all there is any, to the investment that you've already made. But if you need to look at the cost from the kind of impact that you will benefit, you will begin to see. For instance, just to give an example, if you begin to see that there is a higher rate of people reaching out to your EAP partners over phones to seek help by doing employee engagement program, employee awareness program on mental health care, you are clearly seeing direct benefits from the investment you put in.
Hi, Mr. Chandran. Kapila again here. We have one more question. What should line managers do if they think someone in their team might be struggling with mental health conditions?
So one important thing is that the line managers, particularly, it's a very important question, because line managers are the middle management, as we call in organization, are one of the most important, I would say, the the communities in the organization, which need to be empowered with the right knowledge. Why? Because they're the people who volume of employees report to. And they're the people who don't know what exactly mental health, mental illnesses are about. So the first thing that must happen is, how am I empowering line managers with the right knowledge about what is mental health, what is mental illness, what can we do, and how do I provide mental health first aid? What kind of communication can I make to the person? So how can line managers begin to appreciate that there is an existence of a stigmatic environment in my team, and how do I eliminate that? If they have this knowledge, they will know exactly how to intervene. They will, for instance, just to give an example, if there's an employee, staff in the team, and line manager identifies that the person has depressive symptoms, he or she has the right knowledge to know exactly how to speak, what kind of statements can be made to the person, and what is expected of the person with depressive symptoms from an action point of view. So how do I encourage the person to make sure to seek professional help? Because there's a lot of denial in the person in the first early on symptoms of depressive disorder. How do I therefore make sure that the person has removed the denial kind of phase and immediately been encouraged to seek professional help?
Wow. We have one more question which says, what is the kind of support employers can give their staff if they are diagnosed with some mental illness such as a bipolar disorder? What should they do?
So once again, I said that I will not get into the specifics of what exactly can be the action for a specific illness or specific issues like bipolar disorders, because there are different treatments that are available. But the fact is, from an organizational point of view and from the line manager and the immediate bosses and the colleagues' point of view, first thing that must happen is that we recognize the fact that the person has the right to his or her decisions that they make actually. So for instance, we should know what it's like any other disability, for instance. Look at, if a colleague has a certain disability, permanent sometimes or temporary sometimes, we know what the disability can entail, what does it mean, and what way can it impact the work or the role the person is playing. Similarly, when I know what does bipolar mean and what can I expect of the person from a productivity point of view, and how do I make sure that the person continues to be productive in the realm of what he or she can produce, we should encourage the person to be productive. But that requires us to have the right knowledge. But the moment I begin to see bipolar as any other mental health issue and say the person is disabled completely, then I will not be doing justice to the person's abilities against the disabilities that the particular illness can bring in.
Are there any implications for companies legally? Do health policy providers cover mental health?
From what we know, there is no such legal implication. There is no legal norm that forces organizations to have mental health care kind of strategy. But as you said, that it makes more business sense that we have that sooner.
We all hope soon. This is such a delicate topic and it's personal as well. So how do HR or line managers approach individuals when they feel that they are on their radar, and how can they offer help?
Good question. Very good question. So we need to understand what is the first kind of thought process that goes into the mind of the person when an employee who may begin to show early symptoms of a mental health issue. First thing that comes to my mind is, I'll lose my job. The moment somebody comes to know in my organization, I'll lose my job, isn't it? Why is that notion, why is that belief in the employee there in the first place? We must ask. I think the HR team must ask, why is that the belief there? Can I remove that belief? And the belief is there because the employee knows that people around me don't know what mental illness is about, won't have the right attitude towards people with mental health issues. They don't know how to encourage me as a person who has begun to show some early symptoms. But the moment I begin to know that my HR team really has the right knowledge about what people with mental health issues require and go through, they will be encouraging me and supportive of me. They should see wonders there. They will, just as any other physical illnesses, I would be more encouraged to go and tell my HR professional, for that matter, my boss, that I think I need leave tomorrow or maybe for a week, and I am entitled to, because I think I have this problem. And I be rest assured that I'll come back after my treatment, and you know it, that I can be as productive as I have been because treatment can bring me back to normalcy.
Wow. When mental health sufferers are dealing with their own mental health issues, is it very difficult for them to be able to manage their social relationships, relationships with their colleagues? What are the tips or advice that you can give mental health sufferers in that situation?
Very important one again. And part of the answer to this question is also sometimes specific to the illnesses that people will go through. But, the decisions people make, people with mental health issues, and I'm talking about common mental health issues here, actually. I may not be talking about serious mental health issues like schizophrenia or bipolar, but chunk of the volume of the instances in organizations of mental illnesses will be in the common mental health disorder, which is why it's important for us to touch upon that. So when it comes to those, the decisions they make are born out of the social infrastructure we have created and not necessarily symptomatic to the problems that they have. So whether I am going to be closing myself away from my colleagues because I have a mental health issue is in huge way because of the kind of social setup that I'm living in, than as a symptom of the problem that I have. Of course, depressive symptoms will probably push me to close myself and be removed from being much more social in nature. But the much bigger reason why I will be like that is because I don't have the supportive environment. I don't have people around me who know the right things about mental health issues. And this can be changed. This can be reversed. And, and when we begin to reverse that, you'll find that the symptomatic elements which are also contributing to the absence of social personality traits can be also addressed. We begin to see that, okay, the person is closing himself, becoming much more isolated. And I think we can do something. Very early on, we are able to detect because we have the right knowledge.
Yeah, so true. In many D&I topics, we often have champions in a company to be like the face of that campaign, right? So as mental health issues are still remaining untouched, how effective do you think if a company is having an employer as a champion for its mental health campaign, considering the pressure that individuals may have to undergo? What would your advice be and how do they go about that?
So because a lot of the nature of problems that we're talking about has a social bent to it, championing the cause really helps. I mean, if you look at any other, for that matter, any other social issues that we deal with, we try to look for champions, we look for examples and people who we can look up to. So it's very important that we can include championing the cause through, but most importantly, leaders. We keep bringing this up. I mean, we have a lot of celebrities coming out and speaking about their problems, which has encouraged a lot of people to talk about their mental health issues. Yes, but imagine if we have leaders coming out in the organizations, in the communities because I mean, in an organization, I relate to my own leader far better than a celebrity, I would say, actually, with due respect to the celebrities that we have. But I do connect with my leader, my managers and all, because I work with them on a day-to-day basis. And if they champion the cause, they begin to speak about what their notions about mental health issues are, what their attitude towards people with mental health issues, it will completely transform. It'll help us reach the tipping point, I would say, in mental health awareness.
One more question we have, Mr. Machandran. I'm just looking through that and seeing, there are so many questions that are coming in. It's all right. You mentioned that we need to realize that the decision-making power can lie with the person impacted. So could you just elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah. So, if just to give an example, let's say if I have a problem and I'm an employee in an organization, and if I need to go and talk about my mental health issue to my boss, or for that matter, my colleague, and first thing that happens to me is that I should deny that I have a problem. Why should I deny? I don't deny when I have a physical problem, isn't it? Why do I deny to myself that I could be having a mental health problem? Because that is the best defense for myself at the moment. I don't want my colleagues to know about it. Why? Because I know that they don't have the right knowledge about what a mental health issue is. And simple knowledge like mental health is curable, is treatable, So mental health issues like depression and all are extremely curable, treatable, and require early on intervention. Now, they don't have the knowledge. When I know that they don't have the knowledge, then their belief, their notions is helping me make a certain decision. Today, because their belief is not right, the decision that I make is that I will keep my problem to myself, begin to cope with it, try to look for mechanisms to hide my problems from my colleagues at workplace, from my dear ones at home many times. So that's the kind of decision making that as against that, they have the capability with knowledge to be able to detect that I seem to be having some problem, and they begin to ask the right questions. They begin to encourage me to open up, tell them about the problem. Then they will be encouraging me to make sure they'll encourage me to go and seek professional help. So today, we are told by professionals that it takes an average of 6 to 7 years, believe us, 7 years sometimes, from the point that the symptoms of depression opens up to the point when the person with mental health issues, depressive disorders would seek professional help. 7 years. So they deal with the problem, denying to themselves, coping with it for 7 years, because there is a huge pushback from the society that they live in. Don't tell us. I don't think I'm going to support you with whatever support you require. Which is why the decision-making capability of the person with mental health issue is completely tied to the notions, the decisions we as bystanders, we as colleagues, we as communities begin to make.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manoj Chandran. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for our Q&A today. I'd like to thank all our participants for the interesting questions, and I hope they've all been answered. Thank you so much, Manoj Chandran, for your time. For those of you who have further questions about disability in India, we'd encourage you to log on to our Ask the Expert live chat session at 3 p.m. with the featured expert Pratik Kaul from the Gift Abled organization. We also have Mr. Manoj Chandran's organization, White Swan Foundation, having their booth you require. Also, Community Business is looking forward to the launch of our latest edition to our DIAN India Insight series on the topic Disability Impacts Us All, in which we will also address matters of mental health. So do be sure to look out for more information on the publication as we get closer to the launch date in early December. With that, I'd like to thank you again, Mr. Manoj Chandran, for sharing your time and expertise with us today. Thank you also for all our participants for attending today's session. So a recording of this session will be available for download with the next 30 days. So if you found it useful, we encourage you to share this with your network. Thank you again, and goodbye.
Thank you.